What I'm saying is that the problem is not per se teenage pregnancy, it's unwed pregnancy. That's the problem in society. It's only problematic when you are not married and you don't have the man there to help you take care of the kids because he's a coward. Girls between the ages of like 17 and 24 is when they're technically most fertile.
She was in a sexual relationship ongoing with Harvey Weinstein for like 5 years. She kept going back and engaging in this, in this stuff with him. And they do this for the sake of movie roles.
Meet Matt Walsh, a crypto-fascist with a diaper fetish and a weird obsession with teenage pregnancies, who fancies himself the Sacha Baron Cohen of the religious right, but ends up just being another shitty filmmaker who looks as if mansplaining was a person. Having spent years apparently asking everyone in America what a woman is, and finally discovering that a woman is anyone who he can't give an orgasm, Matt Walsh is back in theatres with a new movie called Am I Racist?, which I will just assume set the record for shortest movie ever, since I have the script right here and it's just the word yes. Now, I'm not going to watch this movie, because I don't hate myself, but I did do something just as masochistic in honour of this incredibly ill-advised movie's release. I read Matt Walsh's transphobic children's book. One of the worst things I've ever read. And I've read Graham Linehan's autobiography. It's called Johnny the Walrus, and it's well, let's just say I think we finally found the one kids book that will actively make your child less intelligent. But before I get into the whatever the fuck this is supposed to be, let me introduce myself. My name is Bridget Empire, and I'm the science and culture correspondent for the Daily Telegraph, the only British newspaper that predates the concept of racism. Seriously, Dan here's one of the few people left on the planet that still remembers the slurs we used to use for people from Kent. And don't get him started on those bloody East Anglians. Anyway, I'm assuming I got put on this brief because of the Walrus connection, but really, Matt Walsh understands just as much about walruses as he does about trans people. Meaning, nothing. And being the narcissistic prick that he is, even in this supposed children's book, there is no substance, except for Matt Walsh himself turning up and being condescending to a woman suffering from an awful case of the only exists in a hypothetical made up by a conservative to justify the pre-existing attitudes itis.
Flesh-eating bacteria. Government-created killer nanorobot infection. Hot dog fingers.
But we'll get to that. First, let's introduce this bizarre invention. How did a man who's so pathetic he plays second fiddle to Ben Shapiro, someone who looks like if the concept of not seasoning your food was turned into a real boy, end up writing a children's book? And why would he? I mean, he wouldn't be the only one. Chaya Raichik, aka Lives of TikTok, has a children's book too, so I guess it's just the thing you do when you're a conservative influencer now. And yet they try and make out that we're the ones trying to groom children.
These girls are grade schoolers. Most are still losing baby teeth.
Johnny the Walrus is written by Matt Walsh and illustrated by someone called Reece. Since his name isn't blue on Wikipedia, I'm assuming he's someone the Daily Wire haven't been paying very much. That and the art in the book is... well, it's not to my taste, let's just say that. But I'm neither a child nor a fascist, so I'm not exactly the book's target audience. I'm sure conservatives love terrible art. That they love it when their characters are completely unexpressive. That they love it when everyone in their kids' book looks so bored that their children will cry trying to pay any attention to it. And that's before we get into the fact that this book has Matt Walsh as a character in it. A man who is publicly pro-child marriage. And his diaper fetish doll is a background piece in the art as well. Not something I would recommend to children, no matter how evil their parents are. From what I found online, this Reece person has another book called Tinky the Minpin, with no ratings and no reviews. Apparently it's a kid's book about a mother and child in an enchanted forest, but the cover is just the title on a black background and a Dachshund's face with an Instagram filter over it, so not exactly the most professional. Other than that, I couldn't really find anything about this person. I mean, the art in this book just looks like it was made by Matt Walsh and Microsoft Paint, so for all I know, it could have been. More likely they just hired someone on Fiverr, or got one of their interns and seriously underpaid them. I assume this person's credited as Reece to keep themselves anonymous, as to not be associated with this book, and that's probably a smart move, because it'd be the literary equivalent of listing your felonies on your CV. I did find a bunch of results for a Sarah Reece, but they haven't made anything like the art in this book, and by that I mean their art is actually quite good, and I wouldn't insult them by speculating that they are indeed the person who somehow managed to make Matt Walsh look even more lifeless than he does in his videos.
Women are stupid and I don't respect them.
And just in case you were wondering which publishing house took this on, well, it was published directly by the Daily Wire, the conservative propaganda org Matt Walsh already worked for. So I guess the only people he had to impress were Ben Shapiro and the aptly named co-founder of the Daily Wire, Jeremy Boring. And, well, as you will see, they didn't have very high standards.
Show me your genitals. Your genitals. What?
The key conceit of this book, if you can call it that, is a really weak metaphor about being trans, being like pretending to be an animal at playtime. And you can immediately tell the moment this thing starts that Matt Walsh doesn't know a single trans person, because he's attacking a complete straw man of what trans people are. The same goes with the way the mother character acts, which makes me think that Matt Walsh has not only never met a trans person, but that he's never met a person, period. Or at least he thinks that everyone who's not him lacks any capacity for thought beyond drink, eat shit, and do whatever you're told. Personally, I think if Matt Walsh really wanted to make a movie about a boy becoming a walrus, he kind of missed his mark. I mean, the movie Tusk exists, and that's genuinely terrifying. The body horror shit, that's actually a fairly good metaphor for what gender dysphoria feels like. If you want to tell a trans story, you could tell one from the lens of someone becoming a walrus, but not the way he thinks. I mean, that movie was scary. It made me feel almost as uncomfortable as I did reading this book.
Am I racist?
Yes! Yes!
Speaking of being uncomfortable, the first thing we learn about Johnny, besides the fact that the artist who drew him was clearly underpaid, is that he has a big imagination. You can tell that, because it says it on the page, while Johnny faces the reader, looking dead inside. Spoilers, this is what being trans is apparently, according to Matt Walsh, which should already tell you a lot about how little he's actually read on the issue. I used to imagine I was a Yu-Gi-Oh character in school, but I don't believe in the heart of the cards, no matter how many times I draw the Dark Magician just when I need it. When we played the floor as lava, I didn't believe the floor was actually lava, and yet here I am in my 30s, happily transitioned, something that, funnily enough, I never played around with in school, because that would be fucking terrifying. I was bullied enough for just looking and acting like a girl. No one is pretending to be trans for fun. I got called homophobic slurs enough while being beaten to a pulp without actively giving my bullies ammunition. Perhaps if there weren't arseholes like Matt Walsh around trying to make sure we never evolve into a world that accepts people's differences, I might have been able to be open about being trans sooner. And I might have actually been allowed to have a happy childhood instead of being bullied to the point of actively trying to unalive myself, but no. Being trans is just like pretending to be Godzilla attacking Tokyo, I guess, or whatever this town in the background is supposed to be. Honestly, it looks like Johnny's got a pretty small imagination. He can't even imagine a scenario where he stops doing that painful facial expression. And he's always facing the same way for some reason. It's probably nothing. I'm sure the art will improve just in time for Matt Walsh's brilliant cameo. Anyway, in the words of Matt Walsh, Johnny's a boy with a big imagination. One day he's a dog, the next day a crustacean. Now, I don't want to hear any puppy girls making themselves known in the comments. Matt Walsh might end up watching this video, and I don't want him knowing that you exist. I'll give you pets later. Besides, he's not going to be a dog for much longer, because, well, now we have to look at this page. In the background, you can see Matt Walsh's weird diaper fetish doll he sells. A callback to when he made Nazis fight in adult diapers on camera, and definitely didn't masturbate to it at all. The thing you might notice when you see this page, however, is, well, I want you to learn a lesson from the art. And that lesson is to pay your damn artists. What is happening here? Why does the water look like that? Why does the floor look like it's covered in pubes? Why does that family portrait look like it's Marty McFly fading away in Back to the Future? Why does Johnny's mum look like I drew her? And why is she weirdly clocky? Why couldn't Matt Walsh find a single person in the Daily Wire office who can draw hands? And why does Johnny, now in his infamous Walrus persona, look like he's 7,000 feet tall? Seriously, there are a bunch of the letter M's in the rug in the bottom right, and judging from the rest of the page, I'm fairly certain they said "kill me" in all caps, and was hastily edited out before this monstrosity went to print. The good news is that the whole walrus conceit solves the whole drawing hands problem, since Johnny now has socks for hands and feet now, and he's got wooden spoons in his mouth now, so he doesn't even need to have facial expressions. I'm sure that this will result in very stimulating reading for all the children at home. Anyway, he's Johnny the Walrus now. God knows why he had wooden spoons in his bedroom. Maybe his mum couldn't afford any real toys, and he doesn't seem to have a dad. So he probably took all the money or something, or maybe his dad has to work long hours in the wooden spoon factory, and Johnny takes the spoons with him to bed as a reminder that his dad still exists, or something? Actually, that's a much better idea for a story than anything in this book. You can have that one, Matt, and you're going to need it, especially after this page of Johnny swimming on the floor and the half-finished sketch next to it of him lying down? I don't know. This art is bad. There are only so many ways I can say that, but it seems to be getting worse as I go along. Like, the next page has this MS Paint-ass yoga mat in the background because I guess women be stretching, and this woman has a bunch of framed pictures of yoga poses too. Like, who lives like this? Is she an NPC? Like, no furniture, just yoga poses. This woman's life looks as empty as her expression. I suppose I should stop ragging on this woman because there's going to be reason enough to later, and because this is where we're going to get the actual message starting to come in. Johnny's mum loves her son's make-believe time. You're Johnny the Walrus until you change your mind. Doesn't Matt Walsh have like 6 kids? How does he not know how children play? Don't worry about that though, we've got bigger things to worry about, because Johnny's badly drawn mum has broken her arm. Look at it. Arms aren't supposed to bend that way. She's going to need help, and she's not going to get any, because while she's drinking her legally distinct cup of not Starbucks coffee and going on not Facebook, apparently posting a picture of her kid dressed as a walrus has made her the main character of the day. Something that definitely happens. Also, those are Facebook reacts. Only boomers use Facebook. You try posting something trans-supportive on there, then you're going to get that kind of response. But apparently Johnny's mum's phone says it's not just pretend. So, how trans people work, in Matt Walsh's mind, is you put on different clothes, and then your mum's Facebook friends tell your mum that you're trans, even though you insist you're not. Which, like, if you know anything about trans people, you'll know that trans people are the ones who have to demand they get treated as trans people. And our parents and social media are a struggle to get on side, but why would I expect anything else from a guy who thought making a movie called Am I Racist was a good look?
Women are stupid and I don't respect them.
It's at this point as well that I'm realising that Johnny's mum doesn't have a name. I've said Johnny's mum so many times at this point it's starting to sound like I'm just being intentionally vague, but he literally never gives this woman a name. I mean, I know to Matt Walsh women are nothing more than baby incubators, especially since the only things his female character thinks about are her child and yoga, but you could give her like a one-syllable name and save us all the effort of referring to this person as if she only exists as a function of her son, and that if he walked off the page she just ceased to exist. The only thing tethering her to reality cruelly ripped away, so I'm gonna give her a name. I'm gonna call her Karen. So Karen is apparently so unable to think for herself, presumably because she's a woman, and Matt Walsh doesn't think that women have thoughts besides do yoga and have baby, and presumably refuse to fuck him, that she's immediately persuaded to force Johnny to become a walrus permanently. Like she's the villain in Tusk, except she's supposed to be his mum. I don't know how you can write this and expect anyone to not think it's just fucking stupid, unless you literally don't think women are fully human. She gets called a bigot, even though apparently she just posted a picture of her kid wearing socks on his hands. Not sure why you'd get called a bigot and offensive for that. Unless Matt Walsh skipped a page where she said like a bunch of racist and transphobic stuff and cut it because it made her look bad. I mean, he did shit like that and is somehow surprised that people still think he's a bigot. And just to add how confusing this is, if you've not got permanently online brain and know how these fascist weirdos think, the people responding to Karen here are all 2016 era memes making fun of liberals. Like, these top 3 pictures are just the women every gamergator has used on their YouTube thumbnails for the last 10 years. Despite the world having long ago left them behind. Whether it be the woman in glasses they used to say you sound like you're offended, Big Red, or the woman who cried when Trump got elected. I'm sure this 4th one is easily identifiable too, but that'll be damned if I put more effort into analysing this book than the Daily Wire did putting it together, so let's just move on to the point where this book just completely jumps the shark. Just look at this page of protesters demanding that this child become a walrus. Do I even need to say anything? How did this crowd manifest so quickly? Why do these signs all refer to one kid specifically? What did Karen write in the caption to that picture? From the looks of this protest, someone probably had to call Child Protective Services. Also, Matt, when humans give birth, they don't give birth to walruses. This is a stupid as fuck analogy. Men and women aren't different species. We're really not that different. I know you don't believe that because you seem to be under the impression that women have no internal monologue and lack object permanence. But believe it or not, when you leave the room, your wife doesn't think you're dead. She only wishes you were. The only difference between a fetus expressing male or female characteristics is the presence of a single protein, the SRY protein. If that's not produced, you'll develop with a typically female phenotype, as in you'll look like a girl. And even then, if you don't produce the amount of testosterone typical for males, you're not going to develop like a typical male either. Loads of shit can vary in the process. Yes, most of the time it works, but you have to be nuts to think that everyone's going to develop in exactly the same way. Sometimes sex signals get mixed up. Sometimes brains develop differently. The point is, there is no protein that can be switched off or on and lead to you becoming a walrus. Men and women are not different species. We are very similar, and with a change in hormone levels, you can cross that boundary you've hyped up in your head pretty damn easily. I know this is supposed to be trying to make us look ridiculous, but all this analogy does is make you look profoundly stupid.
You're talking to me about stuff. Why? I'd rather see your titties.
And on top of that, most people don't give a shit. I think there's a reason they're no longer selling this book on the Daily Wire store anymore. Something which I'm sure must be a sore spot for you, Matt. People don't care. Trans people think about trans people less than you and your cadre of genital-obsessed freaks do. Most normal people don't think about trans people at all. And the way you and your buddies on the right obsess about it just makes you come across as fucking weird. And my man, you're already creepy enough. You can't keep adding points to that scale. At some point, you're going to have to start working on looking a little less like the most off-putting man in the world. Or you're going to get chased out of your village by a bunch of farmers with pitchforks. But just wait, because this doctor, with a freakishly long torso and arms, is going to take this one step further. Because Matt Walsh thinks that after one Facebook post, you go to the doctor and they immediately put you on hormones. Even though you can't get on hormones until you're 18 or 16 in some places if you've been on puberty blockers for a certain number of years. And before that you can only pause your puberty to give you more time to make a decision. But no, apparently Johnny has to eat worms and put on grey makeup, which is, apart from anything else, nothing to do with walruses at all. Like, walruses live in the ocean. They don't eat worms, they eat fish. Where would they find worms? Does Matt think they crawl onto the shore and go miles inwards to find fallow soil to dig for worms in? No, they live on fucking ice sheets. Wikipedia is free, Matt. And on top of that, walruses aren't grey. They're brown. Did no one bother to Google image search a walrus before approving this book? Was Matt thinking of seals? Well, maybe. But seals also don't eat worms. So what I'm getting from this is that Matt Walsh is just ignorant about every topic. Not just trans issues and racism and politics generally, but biology too. And as someone with a PhD in biology, this makes him my mortal enemy. If Matt Walsh makes a video about Tyrannosaurus Rex being woke, then I'll know he's trying to piss me off specifically. But getting biology facts so horrendously wrong in your transphobic book is already cutting it way too close. Also, can someone please make me this certificate? Like, give me, as a Christmas present, make me this certificate. As a transgender socialist with a PhD, I need a woke doctor certificate, please and thank you. I will put it behind me on my display. Woke doctor. I'm not even going to make an attempt to explain to Matt Walsh what woke actually means, because to these people it just means thing I don't like, which frankly is more of a middle finger to black people than his fucking movie. Anyway, mother and son are expressionless. Apparently worms give you whiskers, because I guess he needed a hormone analog and he couldn't be bothered to pick anything that made any fucking sense. So worms are testosterone now, I guess. And on the first day seeing the woke doctor, he's put forward for a surgery to turn his feet into fins, which... I mean, if you thought he was wrong about the timelines for getting on hormone therapy, you won't even get considered for surgery until you're an adult, and then you have to get put on waiting lists and it'll cost you thousands of dollars. Anyway, apparently Dr. Woke is going to do it just right on this table, because he just gets the bone saw out straight away, which is definitely how surgery works. When I got bottom surgery, I turned up at my regular GP's office, sat down, and he just took out his bone saw and just cut me right up on the table. No anesthetic, no paperwork, no money, no problems. Anyway, Johnny looks terrified of this idea, which would immediately stop you from getting surgery given you have to consent. And not just once. To get surgery, you have to confirm you want it multiple times and sign that you understand the risks and wish to continue. Johnny doesn't want any of that. He doesn't even seem to want to play Walrus anymore, because the illustrator couldn't be bothered to draw the socks on his hands anymore. So what I'm getting from this is that conservatives think that children are essentially getting kidnapped by doctors, and then transitioned against their will. Who does Matt Walsh go to when he gets sick? If he's so terrified anyone who calls in with even a dry cough will come out with big unnaturals. In fact, Johnny hates his hormones so much that he looks sick and complains that they're gross. Once again, I must stress, you wouldn't get put on hormones until you're much older. And also, you have to ask for them yourself. You wouldn't get it forced upon you. And I find it extremely hard to believe that peer pressure Facebook posts or no, that anyone is getting force-femmed by their mum. So he wants to stop. And you can stop transitioning at any time. And in fact, the whole point of the way we do healthcare for trans kids is for this exact kind of fear-mongering. Except in the UK, they've now banned even this. But the fear is that people will judge the situation wrong or that the kids will regret it. Hence, puberty blockers instead of hormone therapy. They just have more time to think about it. But now he's actively fighting against it, but he can't stop transitioning because his mum got shouted at on Facebook, and she rolled a natural 1 in her wisdom saving throw. So even though she apparently now also thinks this is wrong, he's just fucked. Sorry, kid. Seriously though, she hates it, he hates it, but Dr. Woke got a bone saw out, and Facebook was mean, so you have to do it? I was about to suggest Matt Walsh just go out and meet an actual trans person, but no trans person deserves to have to put up with that shit. Like, look at this shot of him crying in an icy pool while his mother looks on with an expression so blank it wouldn't look out of place on a serial killer, implying this is all because of so much social pressure, aka one badly received Facebook post and a visit to a doctor that read like something out of a really badly written horror novel. Because I guess that's kind of what this is? Speaking of horror, we're finally getting to the Matt Walsh cameo. Strap in, kids. It's time to meet family-friendly Matt Walsh. Just don't ask him his views on teen pregnancy.
Girls between the ages of like 17 and 24 is when they're technically most fertile.
Alright, so Karen takes Johnny to the zoo, where some terrible drawings of walruses, at all different sizes and all grey for some reason, even though walruses aren't grey, are hanging out in what looks like an infinity pool. Also, apparently the Earth is flat in this universe, because the edge of this world is, like, right behind them. And even though it's been established in the text that Karen doesn't believe any of this stuff, she says to the walruses, as far as we can tell, since no other characters have been introduced in this scene, that her boy is a real walrus, whose growth was just stunted. Which is definitely like the thing he's referring to, and not a completely ridiculous analogy that falls apart if you know anything at all about trans people. And in a case of amazingly bad writing all coming together, it turns out she was talking to a zookeeper who was just off screen, something that should have been established 3 pages before, because she was just talking to air. But, you know, Matt Walsh is apparently as bad at writing as he is at knowing things, making films, not being a creep, you know, he's just an all-round incompetent. And speak of the devil, it turns out this zookeeper, who just teleported into the scene from out of nowhere, is Matt Walsh himself. And how badly Matt is drawn cannot be overstated. I'd say that the person drawing this must really hate Matt for drawing him looking like a giant nonce, but he's been drawn with weirdly buff forearms and an outline of a six-pack. At this point, I'm pretty convinced that Matt Walsh just drew this himself, like he drew himself all muscular and sexy. But also looking like a pedophile. Like, look at the muscle outlines. Jesus Christ, this is pathetic. And just to underscore how pathetic this is, oh my god, I'm still thinking about the fucking biceps of the six-pack, Jesus Christ. Just to underscore how pathetic this is, we get to the heart of this book. A children's book. Written purely so Matt Walsh can mansplain what a child is to the only woman in the book. He patronisingly explains what her child is to the one female character. And lo and behold, one word from this patronising dipshit, and she's cured of her dumb woman brain, and suddenly recognises reality. And with those muscles... oh my god, I take everything back. This is art. This is high art. Someone frame this and put it in the Louvre. I love when a man has written and drawn himself with big muscles explaining someone's own child to them. What a hunk. Are the straights okay? So, I would finish by saying, don't buy this book, but I'm not even sure you can. When I checked, this wasn't on the Daily Wire website anymore. Although I imagine it's probably at some Christian bookstores or for sale on RuPaul's weirdly fascist book repository if that's still open. But if you do buy it, please savor this page. The greatest piece of art to ever exist. Our modern day Mona Lisa. Thank you, Matt Walsh, for this gift for humanity. For the rest of you, may you too have your own child explained to you by a weirdly muscular caricature of a conservative talk show host. I've been Dr. Woke. Thanks for watching.
Girls between the ages of like 17 and 24 is when they're technically most fertile.
Yeah.
Okay? That's biological. That's a fact, all right? I'm just stating facts. That's all I'm doing. But what happened recently, and this is the fourth fact, recently in the last 30 years or so, we decided that that's way too young to start a family.
Hey, thank you for watching this video all the way to the end. If you like this video, and I had a good time with this one, why not? It's fucking stupid, but it was funny. Leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, share it with all your friends, share it with all your enemies, share it with everyone. So it does well in the algorithm. And if you want, you can give me money because I am poor and I would like to get out my overdraft. And also it's Christmas, and in December no one looks at YouTube videos, so I kind of need the help. So thank you in advance, and for that help, you can give me one-time donations on Ko-fi or PayPal, links below as always, or sign up to my Patreon or YouTube memberships. We can get early videos, access to the members-only Discord, my Nintendo Switch friend code, and exclusive content. In addition to all that good stuff, you also get your name right out at the end, just like these lovely people. Quesadilla de Tortilla Azul, Liron, Adam Lees, Daniel Nevels, no, not that Paul, MB, Madeline Aguirre, Ben Murphy, Lex Phoenix, Enter Krositz, Janelle, Mira D, Jade Senior, Bo Ear, James W, Marvin Dorr, Tamsin, Bob the Builder, 5445554, Deborah Laboon, Vegish, Zillas Athenaeum, Vince Whitaker, Amelia Unchained, Sarah, Jason Haig, Frank McManus, Susan Foster, Helena Riel, Sierra Whiskey, Orestria, Ali Catkill, John N, Scully, Lloyd Luciente, Jason Cribbett, Shield Baden, Robin Podolsky, Turtle Choom, Casual Observer, Manta Ray, Courtney Burmack, Sleepy Slug, Philip Tebrogo, Soma Pigler, Brain Douche, Artie Wolf, Greg Noble, Deanna McMillan, Caroline Regalado, Alexandra Lilly, Howard Lott, Narania, Skyjan, and Joey Cobalt. Thank you, and someone send me that certificate, Jesus. The fucking muscles. I forgot about the fucking muscles.